This is an AMI podcast.
Everything that I understand only because I love. This is AMI Audiobook Review. Thanks for listening. I'm Ramia Amuddin here with Nisreen Abdelmajid, and every week we get together to talk all things audiobooks with you. Starting with this quote, we've been doing romance, but I'm actually generalizing and going to say we've been doing love quotes throughout the month of February, and this one was from War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. So that's a nice quote. I think that it's kind of cool to pick out different angles of love and be able to associate love in whatever way you want to, kindness, romance, intimacy. I think we've covered a little bit of a few different angles there. So that was today's final love quote for February. Now let's move over to the CELA homepage. CELAlibrary.ca is where we go for this next part. They have some featured titles at the very top, and we like to go through them just to give you an idea of the books being featured on CELA at the moment. The first book is The Red Palace by June Her, and this is a historical mystery. I have some friends who are intrigued in checking this one out because of the context of historical mystery. There's a few things to dissect there. The second one on the featured titles is Unprotected by Billy Porter. This is an actor's biography. And the last one, The Midnight Hour by Ellie Griffiths. Suspense and thrillers for all of you guys who are binging that kind of genre. You're in luck. Now, Nisreen, over to you, as we don't have too many more announcements that have to do with CELA. Let's go over to what's trending or what you like to feature in some audiobook news.
Absolutely. Hashtag Pink Shirt Day 2022 was trending earlier this week. Pink Shirt Day all started as a small act of kindness back in 2007 when teenagers David Shepard, Travis Price, and their friends organized a high school protest to wear pink in unity with a grade 9 boy who was being bullied. With that act of kindness, Pink Shirt Day was born. Price and Shepard's stand against bullying that day in small town Nova Scotia turned into what is now known around the globe as Pink Shirt Day. This year, Pink Shirt Day was on February 23rd on Wednesday, and the organization has a clear message to, quote, lift each other up and, to quote, have greater acceptance, respect, and inclusion for everyone, end quote. I wanted to share 11 children's books posted on CBC with themes of kindness and anti-bullying and empathy. Great share here. So starting off with Little Wolf by Tioni Spatholfer, to Hold That Thought by Bree Galbraith, The Doll by Nung and Trans Davies, 4 Restart by Gordon Corman, Lala's Words by Gracie Zhang, When We Are Kind by Monique Gray Smith, and the last one I'll mention is The Great Bear by David A. Robertson. You can check out the rest of the books posted on CBC. For the parents listening, reading these books with your kids, I think, is such a great conversation starter to talk about bullying. And I think a lot of parents, I'm not one for experience, but I think a lot of parents have this challenge of how to bring up bullying into conversation, and you don't know how to help your kids with bullying. And I think that's a big problem nowadays, especially with cyberbullying. You don't know how to open that conversation. You don't know if your child is going through this challenge. Reading some of these books, of course, each book has a different age group that's focused on, but reading some of these books with your kids can be a perfect conversation starter to that subject. And I wanted to mention donations can be made to the Pink Shirt Day website, or anyone can text the keyword in capital Be Kind as one word to 20222 and reply to the prompt with their donation amount of either $5, $10, or $20. And I wanted to say that again, keyword Be Kind to 20222. Make your donations whenever you can. And those are the books for today.
That's great, Nisreen. I really, can empathize with the context of you want to help, like parents, guardians, people of just, I guess, older age who want to help with kids who are being bullied, young people being bullied. But there are some challenges to that. And really, the obvious ones being bullying when I was a kid seems to be very different contextually than bullying now that's happening with kids. People are much more exposed on technology, on web-based platforms. The way that we interact with each other is quite different, I'd say, just on a daily day-to-day. And then now, yeah, we've, even if you just take the last 2 years into context, people have barely left their homes, barely had the exposure to friends and community in an in-person manner that we would have had a while ago. So there are lots of things to consider. And some of these children's books that you mentioned, and in general, being able to read and contextualize that way some of the issues and challenges that people are facing is super, super important, just to be able to tap in and help our own exposure to the subject matter, and to be able to say, okay, how can I help? And let me go to some credible resources, people, places, like you mentioned, the communities that are trying to assist with this particular thing. How can we go and support that way? So thanks for sharing that, Niz.
Absolutely.
Let's get to pause or playing a title. So we want to talk about one of the featured titles from the CELA Library homepage. And if you want the URL to that, again, it's celalibrary.ca. One of the titles this time around is Unprotected by Billy Porter. It's an actor's biography. So let's talk about what this book is about. I never could have passed for straight, even if I wanted to. And so I never had the dubious luxury of living a lie. From the incomparable Emmy, Grammy, and Tony Award winner, a powerful and revealing autobiography about race, sexuality, art, and healing. It's easy to be yourself when who and what you are is in vogue, but growing up Black and gay in America has never been easy. Before Billy Porter was slaying red carpets and giving an iconic Emmy-winning performance in the celebrated TV show Pose, before he was the groundbreaking star of Broadway's Kinky Boots, and before he was an acclaimed recording artist, actor, playwright, director, and all-around legend, Porter was a young boy in Pittsburgh who was seen as different, who didn't fit in. Porter came of age in a world where simply being himself was a constant struggle. Billy Porter's Unprotected is the life story of a single artist and survivor in his own words. Unprotected is a resonant, inspirational story of trauma and healing, shot through with his singular voice. That's the end of that synopsis, so let's go around the table. Nizreen, pause or play on this title?
It sounds powerful. I'd play it. Being someone who's different, who finds it hard to fit in sometimes, I'd feel like I'd relate to it in some kind of way, so I'd put play.
Okay. And going over to you, Kim, pause or play on this title?
I would pause it at the moment. I just find in the last couple of years, as we've been going through all the things the world is going through, I tend not to read nonfiction. When I'm reading, I tend to read fiction because I guess I just want to break from nonfiction and people's lives and all that. So not because I don't think it would be good. I just think at the moment, no, I would pause.
I honestly know what you mean. Sometimes you need a break from reality.
Yeah. And sometimes I don't like celebrity biographies. Like I like biographies of people I don't know in the news.
Or weren't aware of.
Little known
right.
people that I wasn't aware of. And sometimes sometimes they're not, but sometimes I think, oh, this is way over the top, or, something like that. So sometimes I don't always like them, but.
Well, there's always a publicity aspect to consider as well. But I would actually press play on this one, and literally at the moment press play on it, because I finished in the last little while Will by Will Smith and More Myself by Alicia Keys, and just found thoroughly that both of them were so different and individual from each other. As well, They had a lot of great insights into these people's lives, as you're saying, Kim, the non-celebrity aspect of them, the before I was famous, before I knew this, before I knew that, and then all the different characters in their lives who've played big roles get to come out in a context that you don't get just from following them on, I guess, social media or through their art, right? So this one is one that I'm kind of curious about, especially because of all the stuff, like the loaded stuff he had to
Yeah,
face growing up. Yeah. But
absolutely. I
cool.
mean, I'm sure it would be good. I'm sure it would be.
And of course, it really depends on how you're feeling at the moment. But this is Unprotected by Billy Porter. If you, who's listening, wants to check out an actor's memoir. The voice you're hearing is that of Kim Kilpatrick, and she's here in our check-in with an avid reader or audiobook listener. We're opening up the space to review, discuss, recommend, browse, conceptualize, and of course, reminisce on audiobooks. So Kim, you are the community reporter in the Ottawa region for Kelly and Company here on AMI Audio. But of course, you're also
Yes.
an incredible storyteller, which people may have heard your voice throughout community events as storytelling. And you're an avid reader. So I want to get to some of your habits and preferences with listening before we get into anything else. Are you a pile 'em on kind of reader who takes a lot of recommendations from friends and strangers and whoever, or are you more particular in your reads and choices?
No, I'm a pile 'em on kind of reader. There's fewer genres that I won't read. You could count on my hand. I won't read horror, and I don't like reading westerns. Those are sort of the two that I won't read.
Mm.
And it's more what I won't read than what I will. I'll read just about anything, and I like a nice mix. I like to have tons of books on my device, like not that I am reading them all at once, but I like to have tons of books there in case I want to change and read
Want
something
to
else
flip
for a
around?
while. Yeah.
Can you read multiple books at a time?
I can. I sort of prefer one at a time, but I have definitely read multiple books at a time, but I sort of like to get immersed in one and finish it before I change
Move
books.
on.
Yeah.
Okay, focused. I like that. I have to ask though, have you given any Stephen King a chance or horror?
Well, I wasn't going to at all but I read his book, which I absolutely loved, on writing. It's a book that he wrote. And if anyone is interested in being a writer or a creator of words, it is a phenomenal book about learning the craft of writing. And it was so good that I thought, well, and so someone told me that 11/22/63 was not horrific horror in it.
Right.
So I
Okay.
so I read that and I did really love it. So yes, I would have said no, but when I read his nonfiction book about the writing, and it gives you
Mhm.
so many interesting insights about how to be a better writer and things that I was so impressed with that I did read that one, and I think I read another one too. I wouldn't read some of them for sure. I wouldn't, but yeah,
Yeah.
he is a good writer. I will say that. I will say that for sure about him.
He is, and you have this outside the box approach to, you're like, okay, I want to know how he writes. I don't want to read any of his horror, but he's a good writer and, reputationally so. So you want to see how he does it. Interested in
But
the
I
process.
resisted that book too. I resisted it for a long time, and all kinds of storytellers and writer friends of mine and people who write plays, they said, you know what, you really need to read this book, Stephen King, on writing. And I was like, no, I'm not reading. I don't like Stephen King. And people said, well, I didn't either, but I mean, I really love this book. And so I did, and I was just blown away by it.
And has it helped, because you yourself are a writer, a storyteller, has it helped you to have looked into something,
Oh,
not necessarily
yes.
just because he's a writer, but even if it's not horror that you were willing to write?
No, but he's not talking about writing horror. He's just talking about what makes things more compelling, what makes your
Yeah.
writing more exciting, more interesting. No, it has nothing to do with writing horror itself. It's just about writing. And he puts in little anecdotes about how he learned certain things and how he started and how he wrote this and then how he got. Yeah, I think it has. I hope it has. But it certainly made me think, which I think is, the precursor to changing your ways or adapting your writing or
Yeah.
improving your writing, I guess, you're creating. And I guess as you are an artist and Nazreen too, I think, as well, in a lot of ways too, that any book that helps you create, even if it's not the art
Yes.
form you use, it helps you. Like there's something to be said for reading about creating things and the art of that
Well,
that I really
absolutely.
liked. Yeah.
And that's kind of, I mean, I can speak to it because I read it so recently more myself, the memoir by Alicia Keys. You know, even the way she writes that memoir is so artistic and poetic. I mean, the approach to it, the way she styles it, the words that she uses to describe like even the resistance when she was facing it. It wasn't just angry. She would put it down in this like beautiful penmanship. And I was like, my God, she's an artist. Like it's just,
Oh,
you know, you don't even have to think of it as lyric. It's just everywhere, all around. She's an extremely poetic person. So you're right. You leave that, and it puts you in that headspace, right?
mm-hmm.
You do have a recommendation for us, and I'm curious to get to it. But before that, I want to shout out the Ottawa After Hours book club that you're involved with. So tell us a little about what you guys do, how often you meet.
Well, we started just before COVID, and we were going to be, well, we didn't actually have a meeting before COVID, but we were planning it. We were going to be having in-person meetings in the evening or late afternoon, and it was kind of geared. There's a book club in Ottawa, CCB runs for people, and it was during the day, and a lot of us that wanted it were working, and so we was like, we can't, do that. So we wanted one in the evening, and so we were going to meet maybe at a cafe, maybe in a place. But then COVID came. And so we ended up starting it on Zoom. And so we've continued it on Zoom for the past almost 2 years. Well, yeah, almost 2 years. And it's the first Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. on Zoom. And people take turns picking books. So it's really interesting because it's not, it has to be a book that's on CELA. But we've read so many different types of books because people have many different interests. And even some of the books that we've all really not liked very much, we have lots of discussion about. And it's a really cool, I love it. It's a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
we always have discussion about the readers and about other things to do with the audio yeah, it's really good. It's really interesting for sure.
So
Um,
much community in the audiobook realm, within the blind low vision community, just to be able to, talk and then specifically talk about books and then to recommend books on top of what you're actually discussing already from book club to book club. So that's really amazing. And Kim, speaking of recommendations, your recommendation for us today is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Dohr. So can you tell us why you picked this one to recommend?
Well, it was a bit like the Stephen King I was telling you about, that people kept saying, you got to read this book. So my dad said it, my mom, some of my friends, everyone was saying, you have to read this book, you have to read this book. And I didn't disbelieve them, but it took me a while to get to it. And it's an amazing book. There is a blind character in it who's really well formed. Like, she's a really interesting blind character who actually later in life becomes some sort of major scientist type person. But there's a blind character. It's also a lot about radio during World War II, and you get the perspective from both sides. So from the German side and from the French side, because the girl is French and her family. And there's radio where they're kind of doing resistance, but the German guy's also into radio. So it's really suspenseful and really amazing characters in it. Like, I found the characters really amazing, and the ending is really quite surprising as well. And it's just beautifully written. It's really well written, and it's very interesting. And it sort of stuck with me. I could read it again. It's one of those books, I think I might read it again because there's a lot of details. At some point I'll probably read it again just because there's so many details, and it's such interesting characters and interesting storylines. So no, I did really love it. They were right. They were right. So,
Wow.
and the narrator is really good too. So I would definitely recommend it for sure.
That's amazing. And like you said, people in your life were reading the book along with you, before you, etc. But did you find that it was getting a lot of press from the community, a lot of traction to be recommended?
Yes, I didn't remember it coming so much from the blind community, and I do know that we did read it as one of the first books in After Hours, and we had a lot of discussion about why do people always think it's amazing when the blind person walks out and finds the store, but I mean, she was also traveling through like an occupied city to find some sorts of things. So like we had interesting discussions about blindness and about the character, but I think he really did research well, because I know, of course, we all know there are blind characters in books that are not portrayed well at all, but this one was believable to me. And so I'm not sure. I think the blind community, but it wasn't from the blind community that the recommendations came. Although my family knows me well enough to know that they shouldn't recommend a book with a bad blind character in it. I wouldn't like that. So I trusted when they said, yeah, you should read this, you'd like it. I know my mom and my dad, they wouldn't want to read a book with a really pathetic blind character in it. So not well not well researched, or not, when I hate that.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure you hate that when they don't call things the right things, or they say the blind person, touch the people's face, or they don't call a cane, or they call Braille like those dots or something, like stuff that's, just makes you mad, when they don't even do their research, when they put a blind character in. And, yeah.
Of course. But this is great because you didn't even find it on your own. Like, people were recommending it to you. And of course, there's the relatability, the obviousness of, the blind character, but really the exposure part of it and tapping into that is incredible too, that other people would pick up books with people with disabilities as the main characters. So this is amazing. Thanks for the recommendation, Kim. And thank you so much for joining us to talk audiobooks. I'm sure we'll have you back. But until then, people can check out
everybody.
Yeah, of course. People can check out All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Dohr. That's Dohr for your reference. That's the end of today's episode for AMI Audiobook Review. Until next week, happy audiobook listening.
This was an AMI podcast. For more accessible media, visit ami.ca.